I'm excited about our essential questions for this class, in part because it will take us the entire 7 weeks to even begin to unpack them. We talked earlier about the qualities that distinguish existential or fundamental problems from more mundane, ordinary human issues. Religion is, as the late theologian Paul Tillich said, a matter of ultimate concern. And we can think perhaps about the ways that our problems boil down, each of them, to ultimate concern, if you really think about them. Let's say you're having a bad day. Things are not going the way you planned. You run into sticky traffic in the morning and it takes you a long time to get to school. These are normal human issues, right? Problems that could be solved with better roads or with people driving more carefully. But if you dig deeper, you might ask yourself, what is the real problem? What is it that keeps us from being peaceful even in the worst traffic? Religion tends to acknowledge that the external circumstances do not determine our relationship to our life itself. Religion seeks solutions that can withstand a range of external situations, no matter how bad things get. Religion even seeks a solution that transcends our own death. So, this framework of looking at the human problem and the religious means to an ultimate solution will be our guide throughout this course. At this point, however, I want for us to take a look yet again at our own assumptions about religion. We may come into this class with an unexamined approach to religion. So let's take a look now at some popular conceptions about the nature of religion. Notice if you resonate with any of these. First, the materialist perspective. The word materialist in philosophy refers to a Marxist view, which primarily critiques the economic system of capitalism as being oppressive. Karl Marx famously called religion the opiate of the people. In other words, religion keeps people asleep so that they will not notice the poor conditions in which they are living and working here on earth. In this view, religion is a purely invented phenomena. Religion is a projection of desire for a better life, for an escape from suffering. And for the classes in power, Marx said, religion is a convenient tool to keep the masses behaving properly, with the idea that heaven awaits after this life. Obviously, this is a very negative view of religion, and yet it is a critique that might help us think about certain historical situations and the way that religion has indeed been used. Another view that may or may not include the idea that religion is invented is the functional perspective. However, this perspective tends to see the helpful rather than harmful value of religion, without necessarily making a claim as to its truth value. This is the pragmatic view. In this view, religion is useful to people because it helps them understand the world around them, whether on a cosmological or moral level. Religion in this view also keeps communities and whole societies on the same page. At our own school, for example, it's common to hear that our chapel services are great because they build community. This is a great example of the functional perspective. I would also include here the idea that religious rituals and practices are technologies of the self, meaning that participating in rituals such as prayer can make people feel more connected, act more empathetically in the world, and may even add benefits to the physical process of healing. Anytime you hear the phrase, studies show the benefits of prayer or meditation, this is the functional perspective, and it's being used in quite convincing rhetoric. This perspective also invites us to ask, what kind of person does a given religious practice or belief make? Does this practice or belief add a sense of well-being and ethics to the religious subject's life? Certainly, we have to include the possibility that some religious practices might actually backfire and make people more likely to be jerks or simply oblivious to the world around them. Finally, we need to consider the belief perspective. This is the view that religion exists because it points to or even encompasses truth, ultimate truth, that is, about the world. This perspective can also be seen as an insider perspective. Scripture exists because God inspired it, or because a prophet or sage was granted a cosmic vision of ultimate truth. You might think that this perspective is an exclusivist perspective, meaning that only one religion can be true in the belief perspective. However, this can also be the perspective of theological pluralism. Have you ever heard anyone say that all religions are different paths up the same mountain, ultimately culminating at the same peak? Or that all religions are different lenses on the truth? This too is a belief perspective because it has to do with truth, even though it includes multiple truths or multiple ways of seeing the same ultimate truth. So, while all of these perspectives definitely have their merits, our own religious studies course takes a different approach. We're not going to look primarily at religions as being either invented or true. We are not going to evaluate whether or not religious frameworks and practices are even useful. In fact, we're not necessarily going to evaluate at all. Rather, we will take an analytical view to understanding many different ways that people experience their own religious frameworks in the context of their own lives. This is essentially the phenomenological perspective. We will walk in the shoes of each of the religious subjects we meet. We will, to the degree that we can, empathize with these individuals even as we remain outsiders to their lives. We will ask what sin or suffering means for this particular person as they represent themselves. We will consider how the system of belief and identity helps form these subjects. Of course, we will also reflect on how we each relate to these frameworks in our own contexts, but again, we do not need to decide who is right and who's wrong on matters of ultimate concern. As you know, we will also take a comparative approach to our religious studies. Even if we were just to study Christianity, we would see a great diversity in religious experience. Since we will also study Buddhist thinkers, we will get to experience an even greater diversity of experience. Because of this emphasis on diversity, perhaps, and of course it's my hope, that we will each come to better understand our own experiences of life's existential problems and the range of solutions that are available, whether these are imagined or comprehended in the human mind. Finally, I want to say something about a metaphor that I've thought a lot about in regards to comparative religion. I think of comparison as a kind of depth perception. How does depth perception work? My understanding, very unscientific understanding, is that because you have two eyes that are set apart a couple of inches, this actually gives you a sense of the world being three-dimensional. A slightly more dramatic but related metaphor would be 3D glasses. How do 3D glasses work? So when you wear two lenses with, for instance, two different colors, and you look at the screen that would otherwise appear both muddled and two-dimensional, the lenses create an experience of depth. In this metaphor, of course, one lens might be one person's experience and the other lens is someone else's experience, or one religion and another religion. And looking at both of these simultaneously creates this experience of depth, a roundness to the objects, a sense of both meaningful distance and present reality. I know this is a poetic and kind of strange image, so I invite you to take it and ponder it or leave it if it doesn't serve your own imagination. I want to end with an encouragement to each of you to look into the vast diversity in religious experience. We will not just look through two lenses, in other words, but through many lenses. The poster of the World Religions Tree, linked both to our slideshow and also in physical form in our classroom, is an amazing portrait of the diversity of religious sects. If you were to study the practices, beliefs, sacred spaces and objects, narratives, experiences, institutions, and communities of all of these religions and their branching sects, you would find incredible diversity and some really interesting places of overlap. You would find that human ideas about the problem and the solution and the means vary widely and also converge at times. You would find that the many ways that religion changes in cultural context and the ways that religious experiences change depending on historical and political context are absolutely vast. And if you looked even closer into the many individual experiences within each of these sects, you would actually find diversity there too. You might even find, looking at one human being in any one of these religious contexts, a diversity within that person, a set of contradictions, a multitude of possibilities. And then perhaps you'll look back at your own life and find diversity and possibility there as well.